Since David Cameron won in 2010, every Conservative Prime Minister pledged to reduce immigration into the UK.
So that's how we're changing immigration in this country, getting net migration down radically.
Including Theresa May, who gave certainly the most controversial speech of the whole conference yesterday, talking about limiting migration.
The numbers will come down because we'll be able to control the system in that way.
And very clear that the levels of migration are too high and they've got to come down to more sustainable levels.
Despite such promises being made in the build-up to every general election, the Tory party has never actually followed through with the wishes of the electorate and consistently increased immigration levels into the UK each and every year. The only slight exceptions to this was during the COVID pandemic, when migration throughout the world decreased. Many argue that the beginning of mass immigration to the UK began back in 2004 under Tony Blair, but this is completely false. In 2004, 10 new countries joined the European Union, such as Poland, Estonia, and Hungary. With EU rules allowing freedom of movement, this did lead to an increase in EU migration, as can be shown in the image here. These statistics show net migration to the UK, which is the difference between the number of people immigrating into the UK and those who have immigrated out of the UK to another country. EU net migration was only 15,000 in 2003, but thereafter this increased significantly and was at its highest level under Tony Blair in 2007, when the figure was 127,000 people. However, EU migration only tells part of the story. In fact, non-EU net migration figures in this time were far greater than the EU ones. In 2003, non-EU migration totaled 224,000, compared to just the 15,000 already mentioned EU net migration the same year. In the years that followed, non-EU net migration remained extremely high under Blair's leadership. By conventional wisdom, you may expect that under the Tories, immigration and net migration to the UK would have reduced, but this has never happened. In fact, almost every year since the Conservative Party replaced Labour in government, net migration to the UK has risen, and since 2021 it has skyrocketed. The statistics here show that non-EU net migration to the UK was 496 in 2021 and a massive 873,000 in 2022. Interestingly, EU net migration was actually a negative figure in these 2 years, meaning that more people left the UK to go to EU nations than the other way around, most likely due to the fallout from Brexit. Under Boris Johnson's leadership, the UK achieved record-breaking immigration and net migration levels into the UK. This is from the party who have always promised its voters each election they would do the complete opposite. The Tories have also seen channel crossings go from a few hundred in 2018 to tens of thousands since 2021. Again, this is from the people who always say they will deal with this matter and stop the votes. So evidently Sunak and all of his predecessors have said one thing about migration matters, and while in power done the complete opposite. This raises two questions. One, why do the Tories say one thing and do the other? And two, why has a majority of the UK public continued to vote for them despite this? The reason the Conservatives tell their voters they will reduce immigration levels is quite simple, really. It's because they know it's what the majority of the public want. UK voters have always wanted lower immigration levels, for a variety of reasons. And this is why Sunak, Johnson, May, or whoever else have always publicly stated that they want to reduce immigration levels too. If a Tory leader was to come out and say they wanted to increase immigration levels, they know that they wouldn't stand a chance of being elected. Millions of people would not go out and vote for them. The Tories, in fact, are quite happy with increased immigration into the UK, and this is why they continue to do this. It is not incompetence or a lack of willpower that has resulted in continued mass immigration. It is deceit. Years ago, when we were in the EU, many in the party claimed they were unable to do anything about immigration because of EU freedom of movement laws. That's despite the fact that during the years we were actually in the EU, non-EU migration was far higher than EU migration into the country. But since Brexit happened, and we are no longer subject to EU freedom of movement, the country has actually experienced record immigration levels. The Conservatives want mass immigration, despite saying the opposite. Primarily for economic reasons, such as the ageing population, and also big business and donors wanting cheap labour with depressed wages. They know exactly how to hide their true intentions and lie to their voters. More importantly, perhaps, is the question about why the voters still vote Conservative, despite the huge immigration levels dating back to David Cameron's leadership. The blunt answer is ignorance. The majority of the British public is simply ignorant on the issue of immigration numbers to the UK. A recent poll of the public showed that on average, Respondents thought net migration to the UK was only 70,000. This is almost 10 times less than the actual figure of 672,000 in 2023. This displays that most UK voters are clueless about the numbers, and this helps to explain why the Tories continue to get away with their lies and false promises. It is a strategy which has sadly worked since 2010, and Sunak is seemingly attempting the same approach now, particularly when he talks about what the government is doing, and I can't help but roll my eyes when he says this, when he says they will stop the boats. The boats have not stopped, and the Rwanda policy, if it ever actually goes through, will do nothing to stop this either. In fact, it has recently been revealed that Rishi Sunak's government has allowed 16,000 illegal immigrants, including those who have crossed the English Channel, the right to work in the UK. Does that sound like a government who are trying to deport illegal immigrants and reduce incentives for others to get here? I'll let you answer that one. Whether it's their general election pledges, their comments during the Brexit campaign, or discussions surrounding Rwanda right now, the Tories are lying when they say they will reduce immigration. The question is, will people fall for it this time?